This is Jovan Jones, and you're looking at Extra Time TV.
Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Extra Time TV. This is Andrew Soklal, joined by a man from Scotland, James Baird. And of course, today we're going to talk about the World Cup qualifying match between Trinidad and Tobago and Saint Kitts and Nevis. Now, James, heading into this game, it's all over the news. It's obviously quite public knowledge that the draw against the Bahamas was, a dark moment for us. It essentially, it basically eliminated us from the World Cup with a draw, which was essentially a loss. We were out. That's it. Everybody has had their say. We did our response to that. You guys can check out that video. A lot of people were curious to see the response in this game. St. Kitts are top of the group, and Trinidad were heading in. People were not happy with the performance, and they got a 2-0 victory. It was definitely an improved performance with goals from Muckette, Duane Muckette, and also from Khaleem, Hyland. And, they did create some chances. But, James, let's get your initial reaction to the game. Let's hear it.
Well, I think it was definitely a better performance. It was a little sluggish at the start, but I think Levi Garcia and Duane Muckette definitely lit up the show for me. I thought Garcia was excellent. He was always on the right-hand side, cutting in, whipping crosses over, and he was a real nuisance to the St. Kitts back line. And I think it probably could have been a few more, actually. But I think St. Kitts didn't play the same way they've played in the other games. It was a little, they definitely were down a gear or two. You could see that. They made a few changes, but it's definitely a better performance and a bit of confidence for the Trinidad and Tobago team, because as you said, it's been dark days for the last days since that game. There's been a lot of chatter, a lot of negative talk, but I think this will definitely lighten the mood a little bit. The talk's still going to be there, but it gives us a bit of hope going into that game against Montserrat on the 2nd of July. So not a bad performance. As I say, some individual players really showed up today. And there was nobody that you could say today was a really bad influence or had a bad game. So on that front, it was a good result.
Yep, and just building on what I was saying at the beginning, there was a lot after the game, obviously. There was a lot of negativity, a lot of things being said. A lot of people highly criticized the players for the performance because it really wasn't a good performance. I mean, we both said that in our reaction. And, the motivation definitely, everybody, critics, supporters alike, the few that they do have, were looking to see the response. And while it obviously was not a perfect game, and I know Terry knows this, obviously he's a coach. There were things I saw he was unhappy with, which both of us saw as well. There were little things, but there was definitely a good indicator of what this team is capable of, if they focus and get things right. And it's a good reference point, because I honestly believe if they lost this game, it would have been very, very devastating for morale. It was already bad as well. So I think, kudos to the players for rising to the occasion, because, they have been accused in the past, Trinidad just, expected to lose all the time. And, this is a game where the stakes weren't really that much. It was mostly for, pride and respect. And, I know that's not a very technical response, but the emotional aspect of the game. And I think the guys go after this game could take a lot of positives from this, because, there was so much negativity, even a couple hours before the game. There was videos released about conflicts within the team, things like that with, Kelvin Jack and those guys. So it was just nonstop. It has been, from a media perspective, a nightmare for this team. However, kudos to the players. When they do well, we give them props. When they don't, that's part of the thing. While, there were a couple of times St. Vincent, created some openings, which was a bit of a concern. They looked more comfortable on the ball. I noticed there was some times where they had some long durations of passing, but it wasn't useless possession, because St. Kitts were trying to get the ball back. And it wasn't like just side-to-side passes like the other game. I saw that they were, creating, the players were moving more. Khaleem Hyland really, I noticed he really had a commanding influence, going around the pitch, telling everybody else, we all know about Levi. I was really impressed with, Duane Muckette looked a little more comfortable and creative. So, it's possible, James, did you think that maybe the nerves of it all, even though it's the Bahamas and we should have won, did you think the contrast between the two games was a result of, the big occasion and the stakes got to those guys and they were more relaxed today and we got to see a little bit more of what, these guys are capable of?
I don't think so, actually. I think it was a little bit of complacency because, I think we expected to go out and beat Bahamas and the possession count, the shots on goal. The players thought that they were going to, in a sense, win the game a little bit easier because even if you think about this, I don't remember in the Bahamas game, I could be wrong, hearing Terry, for example, shouting so much on the sidelines. Today, you heard him from every single second of the game. So even from that point of view, you could see that, even Terry was up for it, the Bahamas game, I'm not saying, as I say, we don't have the cameras down there to hear the whole game, but it didn't seem to be as much urgency. Now, as I say, the fact that the team created so many chances and had so much possession showed that we did want it. I just think that we didn't step up our game to the right level, put the intensity on, which we stepped it up in this game, but I still think we were maybe only in second gear, maybe third gear, but we were definitely not at our best. But I think we took our chances well. As I say, Levi Garcia really showed up. He was a nuisance. There was a lot of space out wide, but he was a nuisance. And then even guys like, I thought Carr, when he came on, looked very hungry to score. He did not score, obviously. I thought Hyland was very good box to box, did really well. I think Aubrey David did pretty well at the back as well. So, and then I think Jesse Williams. So there's a lot of players that stood out today. So I think it was just, as I say, simple complacency in the last game. We needed to show up this time and give the fans something to look for, especially going into that Montserrat game. And I think they did do that. Could we have played better? Yes. Could Saint Kitts have stepped up? I believe so. But at the end of the day, we got the 2-0 result, 2 good goals. It could have been more. And I think I am pretty pleased with the performance.
Yeah. Of course, they're going to have the people who will nitpick, but, we try to be as unbiased as possible. When there's problems, we point them out. As you said, Aubrey David, and, they looked comfortable on the ball, because, as I said, I'm going to talk about, the mental aspect of the game. After the stakes of the last game and, drawing against, the Bahamas, because your confidence could easily be broken. And, I think they really responded, and I think in the ideal way, not just for the crowds and the critics and the crowds that don't go in the stadiums anyway, but respect to the guys. They took a hard hit. I felt horrible after the game, so I can imagine how those guys felt as a player, as somebody from Trinidad and Tobago, and they came out. They could have just said whatever and cash in, but they rose to the occasion. I saw a lot of fight in the team. Judah Garcia looked really. I was impressed with him in the last game. I liked his attitude in the last game. I liked how he looked angry that they were, not scoring. I like to see that in players, a little fire. I saw in this game, the combination of the both brothers. Judah gave a nice little bit of dynamic movement in the midfield. He was something different. He could dribble a little bit. Sure, he got smacked around a couple of times, but he was drawing a lot of fouls. But I saw what he was trying to do. And then in the second half, I guess I was a bit uneasy because the substitutions were made at the half. And I was like, I was wondering if the substitutes were a bit too early in my mind. Because, based on the last game, the confidence level wasn't that high from my end. But, Angeron came on and, he did a good job. He was hassling and hurrying in the midfield. And then when he eventually got adjusted, because the pitch was a bit bumpy, the passing started to get smooth. There were times where we were knocking around the ball, as I said, very comfortably. And I think that amount of game management kind of calmed the nerves a little bit because, if we kept, attacking, which would have been good as well, we could have easily, they were starting to get into the game a little more. By them, I mean Saint Kitts. They were starting to get a little more aggressive. I can't remember who the number 20 was. We're starting to get a little bit of headway. But, kudos to them. And they created some chances. A lot of people spoke about the penalty that, Levi forced. And, I saved Levi for last. Levi was unstoppable in this game because every time he took a player on the wide areas, he blew past them. Of course, some of the deliveries didn't get in. But the fact is he was a constant threat down that side. His physicality was really strong. He held up the ball really well. Carr was, that the second goal was kind of credit to him. He kind of held the ball up just the right amount of time, which was a problem in the first game. They were holding up the ball and taking really long to release. So I guess that was addressed. So, a lot of people could counter our arguments, James, and say, all right, well, this game doesn't matter. But I don't think so. I strongly disagree. Yes, it's very disappointing that we did not go to the World Cup. There's nobody who knows that more than I do. I sat down and I was sad. I'm sure all the players were. We saw even Kelvin Jack, placing palm, his hands. But the momentum from this game gives the people around the staff and the players some confidence heading into that game with Montserrat, which we'll touch on towards the end. So what do you think about it?
One thing you said there, and I think it's interesting, is we basically missed out on qualifying by a point.
Yeah.
So when you let that sink in for a second, and also we basically missed out on qualifying without losing.
Yeah.
It's quite a sobering fact that. So yes, you can say all you want about we didn't live up to expectations. Okay, we didn't. But when you look at those two facts, well, everybody wants to qualify. Yes, there's no doubt about that. If you think about it this way, Saint Kitts are going through. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they're going to come up against El Salvador, one of the. I call them the North American, South Americans, but one of those teams that they're very flamboyant in the North American game. Mm-hmm. I can't see them getting past them. It's going to be a big step up for them. And then you come up against obviously Haiti, Jamaica, the bigger guns, let's say. So it'll be tough for them. But you're right. I think we've seen enough. I think there was a lot of positives. We could go down the route of looking at all the negatives, but what will that do for the Trinidad game? So, but I think one thing which is very glaring to me is how good Levi Garcia was in the ball, and it made me have a discussion with a friend of mine to say, could we use Levi Garcia also as a centre forward or a false nine? Because he seems so good at holding up the ball. Yes, we love him out wide. He can cross, he can shoot from wide, but maybe if we use him a little more central, we'll get a bit more out of him. We might get goals out of him too, which we need. Because one of my concerns is I don't think, again, Telford is a centre forward. Carr obviously held up the ball, but I don't think he's a prolific goal scorer. Could Levi Garcia give us that edge in terms of goal scorer? Because we know he can score goals. Now, when you put him out wide, do we diffuse, those opportunities? So, it's just something to think about. But I think it's a good point. Could he be used wide or up front? So just my thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's a good thing because he has the characteristics to play a false nine. He definitely does. His physicality, his ability to dribble. And, you also made a good argument as well, counter argument, where if he goes in, maybe the service to him might be a problem. And maybe, because I agree with you wholeheartedly about Telfa. I think I saw him originally when he first played for Trinidad Tobago. He would make these very darting runs out on the wing. He has pace. I think maybe Terry's logic, and maybe when we eventually get to chat with him, he could tell us, maybe he tried that with Telfa, thinking, okay, I don't want to lose Levi on the wing, but maybe he could get some service in, and eventually Telfa is going to put one away or something like that. It didn't happen. And you're right, he doesn't look fully comfortable in that position at all. But I could see the logic, and I can understand what you're saying with Levi Garcia. I just think that we have a lot of flair in Trinidad and Tobago. So is there somebody else that could play wide if he gives us that edge, inside, So it's just a thought, but I think it's a good option as well to have. Yep. And kudos to these guys. There's a lot of things. I know there's a lot of negativity with Trinidad and Tobago football, but perspective is everything. And James, you made a very valuable point about missing out by 1 point. Yes, the consequences are dire that we didn't go to the World Cup, but let's be very honest. A lot of people, we haven't qualified for the World Cup since 2006 with some of our best teams. We had a really great squad back in the 2002 campaign. And, just comparatively to now, this is not making excuses. This is just observing over time. With all these problems we've had, which is well documented, all these things are going to happen. Lots of critics, lots of lack of support, COVID-19, not the Trinidad and Tobago community has not been united to get these results. And as you said, basically in all the competitive games, 0 losses, 2 wins, 2 draws, Obviously, one draw was, a most notable one. We can't ignore that. It is what it is. But when people are making decisions about Terry and the national team, this is why when you have a technical team of people making decisions, you can't be a fan in that position where you make knee-jerk reactions. Because I saw all the comments, and yes, I'm a Trinidad Tobago fan, and I felt it when Trinidad Tobago drew and we realized we couldn't come out. That's okay. But I know a lot of people will be saying, okay, get rid of the coach, get rid of all the players, the entire team is rubbish. But you and I, have knowledge of these players. They're not rubbish players. They're not. They're decent players, but yes, they've been training under ridiculous conditions. You use the right word, flair. And I think the reason why I bring this up, moving forward now, there's a lot of positive takeaways, and it's important because I already could see a lot of things that people would say, oh, it wasn't an important match. We were already out. It didn't matter. We didn't score when it matters. But okay, and then you know what? Fair enough. But we're heading into the game that could get us into the Gold Cup against a Montserrat team that is very good, by the way, folks. You people out there who keep saying we should be hitting these teams 5 and 6. You need to stop that. It's not true. These guys are good. Show respect to your opponents. But I think, James, heading into this next game, it's very important for those people around the national team to ensure that they keep this team together. Because, James, before every game, I read the news just like everybody else. You're not sure which players are going to turn up. That has to be a nightmare for the coach, James. I mean, you found a winning team, and then the next match day comes up. Oh, I don't know if this guy has his passport. I don't know if this guy is going to make it, And as a coach, you'll be like, oh, okay. And then you do an ad hoc solution. Okay, this guy's not going to make it. Then we also have the COVID-19 situations. Marvin Phillip got sick. Marvin Phillip is a great goalkeeper. So having these senior guys around and all these obstacles don't help. So I'm hoping the people that are involved take this positive moment because we've had few positive moments and say, okay, let's build on this. We have a nice group of players. The confidence is high. Work on obvious weaknesses because it was not a perfect game. And, everybody knows that. So that way, when we head into the Montserrat game, there's a place some confidence. And also, I think, and I'm a glass half full guy, the Bahamas thing would have definitely taken away any complacency they would have had against this game against Montserrat. I think it's a hard lesson, just like the US when they got knocked out by us. To me, I think it's the same lesson, James. So, I know I ramble off a bit, but that's the good stuff, James. That's what we need to talk about. So, James, what do you think about the momentum of this game heading into the Montserrat game?
Well, the good thing is the only way is up. I mean, we know we kind of hit rock bottom with that result. I mean, and the funny thing is, rock bottom is not necessarily rock bottom because we're still, we didn't drop necessarily huge places in the rankings. We may drop 1 or 2 places, but I mean, some good results will obviously then pick us back up. But this Montserrat game is huge. But I think there's some things that Terry has to do off the field as well. There's a month till the game. Obviously, we'll be hoping he can bring back in the players that he wanted, like Nicolas Fenwick, Singh, and I think there was one other that couldn't make it for whatever reason. So I think those guys he'll be hoping will join the camp, obviously. But I think he needs to have, a few team meetings, get the morale up behind the scenes, do something to shift the, how do I say it? Basically, take the onus off the team a little bit. So team bonding for the team, but also whether it is he brings in a few extra staff members or some old national players to help him, just to kind of fluff up, let's say, the public opinion, because people they're not happy with the result, they're not too happy with him, so he needs to kind of play to them a little bit, I think, and I think those things might help because it's a huge game. I think even down to for himself, I think if he wins this Montserrat game, if I'm not mistaken, he gets an automatic extension of his contract. So for him, it's huge. For the players, it's huge because everybody wants to go to the World Cup as well. The Gold Cup. And as I say, it's against a very good Montserrat team, which I have watched a few times. They have some really good players. They've had some good results. I think they're drawn tonight already at the moment with Grenada, but they will not be an easy team to beat. So there's lots of things to work on. But the other thing is, I think there's a month, obviously, window between now and then. I think they're coming back to Trinidad. Obviously, they have to go into mandatory quarantine for 2 weeks. So they're literally going to get maybe a few days back home and then they're back off again to wherever this game is going to be held. I can't remember. I think it's the States maybe. So it's not a lot of time to prepare. So there's a lot of things he has to get done between now and then to get the best out of these players.
Yep. And, it may be a blessing in disguise that they are around each other much, because now there's a good aura now. They've been faced with the worst. And I think this is what character is built from. They've had to face a lot of crisis, a lot of criticism, a lot of obstacles. And, that aspect of the media, let's be honest, the media has been picking on this team a lot. Every article you read is like, we're waiting for this team to mess up. And, that's what it feels like. And, yes, I can understand constructive criticism. I understand there's some people that may disagree with how a coach does. I get that. That's football, But, there's definitely going to have to be some sort of emphasis on protecting these guys and creating an environment that is healthy, because it's very clear, James. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that something isn't right. And those individuals who are, things are always being leaked out. There's always some information or whatever. And the team, instead of focusing on what they have to do, they have to do this. And, it puts pressure. And kudos to Terry. If it's one guy who could take that criticism on the chin, it's probably him. I know a lot of guys probably would have gotten angry a long time ago and said, I'm done. I'm done with this.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I'll tell you one thing. I mean, I'm a big movie buff, and in all the great movies, when, for example, a sporting team does something great or something great happens in the movie, it usually takes somebody dying or some terrible act. Well, Trinidad football died a couple of days ago when we played against Bahamas. So maybe that's what they need to take us to have a fantastic Gold Cup campaign, So you never know. Sometimes, it could be the fairy tale at the end. So we have to get behind the team. At the end of the day, no matter what, it's Trinidad and Tobago. It's not Terry Fenwick. It's not, Khaleem, Hyland. These guys are involved, but it's Trinidad and Tobago. And if the public does not get involved and get behind the team will not reach their potential.
Yep. And I think, there's a lot of young guys in the team. So, they're very impressionable. And, I kind of like what I'm seeing from the younger players. I was very impressed. I like Judah Garcia's fight. I've always liked him anyway, but I liked his fight. I also like Angeron's fight. I saw there was a little situation where he got a little heated and got in a player's face. That's good that these players have this kind of, listen, I want to win. Obviously you need to calm down and learn to balance that. But it's been a while since you really seen that kind of fight and passion where these kids look like, I want this position, Like, listen, I don't care if we're not going to go to, I want to win this game for my country. And I like that. I saw that. And that's good. And maybe that's why it's good to inject some of these young players. And I said it before earlier in the video, these guys got a trial by fire. A lot of these guys have been playing zero football. They've been relying on training amongst themselves. A lot of people out there in all these forums are saying, well, why don't we play friendlies? It's like, do you all even pay attention to how football, there's a pandemic, they can't play anybody, So, it's I guess this is where EXTV comes in, where we could add that balance of, both sides rather than and logic. And that's what we pride ourselves here. We look at both sides. If nonsense is happening, we'll say it, we'll talk about it. And that's what we try to do. And, I'm just going to, shift some. I want your opinion on this, James, as a goalkeeper. So we're talking about the positivity of the squad. The players have a nice aura right now. Fonset, had a good game, moving into the next game, do you think, okay, so we just won with this guy, we won with this team, although Nicholas is a very good goalkeeper, Terry would probably have a decision to make, okay, should I break up this team? I mean, they put something together. Or would bringing in Nicholas Friendrup cause any problems? I don't think it will, but I would like to know your thought, because you are a goalkeeper. You imagine that, and you would have a unique perspective. So let me know your thoughts.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is Adrian Fonset did fantastic in the two games, 2 shutouts for him. And I think the one thing you have to remember is he hasn't played a whole lot of football, because obviously he plays locally.
Correct.
So, I mean, he had to come into game. Now, concentration's huge as a goalkeeper, as you know. So he came in, he did very well. He's obviously trained, and he probably came into these games thinking he would not play. Let's be honest, because he would have saw Nicholas play the previous games, and he would have thought he would have been there. And then obviously he's cast in. Obviously Marvin Phillip couldn't go with the squad because of COVID. We don't know who would have played between the two of them if he had been there, but he obviously played. So you're right. It now gives Terry a dilemma, but it's a good dilemma to have. Now, I think from a goalkeeping perspective, confidence is huge. Obviously, 2 shutouts is excellent. It depends if he's going to change the defensive structure, for example. Is he going to go with the same defence? If he's going to go with the same defence, he may stick with Adrian. But I think if he's going to tinker a little bit, and this is where, as I say, I'll have to wait and see what Terry's going to do, because, I mean, there's no doubt Nicholas is an excellent goalkeeper. I think he gives a lot in terms of he has very good vision and very good distribution as well. Not that Adrian does not have that, but obviously he's playing out in Europe. So it gives Terry a very good dilemma. From a goalkeeping point of view, it's not ideal to change them, but these are do or die games. So at the end of the day, it'll rest in Terry's hands. And I'm not going to speculate. I've gave my 2 cents, and I mean, if you want me to say if it was me, I think I am going to go with who's on form at the time. There's no games between now and then, so I may stick with Adrian Fonseca.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just our best educated guess, So, and that's a luxury to have right now, that we have both goalkeepers in form. So, it's a happy problem to have. So we'll see how it goes. So, folks, I can't remember the exact stats, but let's put things in perspective. Terry has played 5 games with the national team. The US friendly, which was the 7-0 one that everybody spoke about, obviously. That was our first game in how long? I think it was almost a year and a half, James. I can't remember.
Yeah.
So it was USA. Then we played Guyana. Then we played Puerto Rico. Then we played Bahamas. And then we played this game today. In the competitive games, no losses. There have been 2 draws, 2 wins, and 1 loss against the US in just 5 games under ridiculous circumstances. Just comparatively, in terms of taking the current situation that he is facing with all the obstacles, if whoever is evaluating must think that, based on all the things that have been going on, it should have been 5 L's, to be honest, with the kind of problems we've had. Yet somehow, through all this, the players and the coach have managed to get some good results. And to me, this just shows whoever's making the decisions have to say, okay, whether you like the guy or not, you have to learn to think, objectively. And imagine if this guy had the support that the things he wanted. I mean, getting results under those things. But there will be people that will argue, okay, well, we didn't get to the World Cup and that's all that matters. But then that's the problem with Trinidad and Tobago football, James. Trinidad and Tobago football is, okay, it didn't work. They fire the coach. They don't fix the other problems. New coach comes in, comes with the existing problems. Cycle repeats. The usual responses are, let's go back to grassroots football. Let's go back to community football, which is great, I guess. I understand that. But, we need to revamp our football. But we can't just keep revamping every couple of seconds. Eventually, there's going to have to be a point where people sit down and say, okay, let's plan properly, commit to, maybe a cycle. And I'm not just saying this for Terry. This is for any coach who comes in. This is what we need to do. We need to have that continuity, because if there's so much negativity surrounding our football with all this crisis, to me, it shows, a kind of unrealistic expectations. Not only fans, I actually have no issues with the fans. Fans are allowed to be passionate and, sit in their couches and throw stuff at the TV and that's okay. That's fans, but, people in football making these kind of comments doesn't help us. It doesn't help these young players. We have a nice generation of players who are thriving in a pandemic. I'm sure scouts looked at that game tonight at those players like Muckette. Well, anybody who follows football locally would know Muckette was already a good player. Judah Garcia is already known as a good player. And Jaron and those guys. Fonset, who has always been, around the national setup for a while, but, John Michael was there, is really showing, this guy, the number 1 spot. And then we have 2 goalkeepers. The only issue, I think, James said, kind of end this off, I guess, because, we love this sport. We'll talk about it all night, every day. The strikers. Now, as we spoke before, he tried Telfa. And, we're thinking, Levi Garcia could be a good solution. But while we did create a lot of chances, we definitely need to, fine tune. I mean, there's lots of aspects we need to work on. As I said, the game was not perfect, but it definitely was a vast improvement from what we've seen before. Striking is one of my concerns, and it's not something with Terry Fenwick. It's something we had a while now, since before Terry. Well, it would be Dennis before, and then before Kenwin was still around, before eventually he stepped down. We haven't replaced that number 9 in our squad for a long time. Kenwin was the last guy, and coming down towards the end, eventually he stepped down. We tried, I think, Botswain under Dennis Lawrence. I can't remember the other guy. A couple of guys. No one has really been able to do that, and that has been a real problem for us, because I've seen games where we've played really well and lost because we had some chances that we should have scored. And today there were some chances, I think, and for both teams, by the way, they had some chances as well. Very few, but they had chances that if we were more clinical, that game could have been closed off a long time ago. And, that's something. But what do you think about that, James? Because it's not like we have an array of available players right now to call from, which I think a lot of people don't understand. So, I was thinking about players like Lobo and, Plaza as well. I think Plaza, would have been, a good option. What do you think about those guys possibly stepping back in?
I think they're good options. I think one of the big concerns, obviously, Terry probably has too, is there's not a lot of football going on. I think Marcus Joseph came back from, I think he was in India, if I'm not mistaken, and then obviously Plaza was with the beach soccer or the futsal team, but they've not been playing, obviously, like none of the players have been playing locally. And then you've got the other option, like I suggested, do you switch somebody position-wise, like Garcia, bring him inside? But again, it may mean changing formations too, so it depends what Terry wants to do, or if he wants to stick with the way he's playing. So there is a few options, but you're right. I think we do definitely lack a centre forward. I mean, we've got players, as I say, that could probably play as a false 9, that could drop off, or that could probably play with another striker, for example, if you're playing 2 up. But I don't think we have a centre forward, for example, with the front 3, 2 wide players and a centre forward. So that's one of the issues we do have, and obviously that is where the goals would come from. So I think Terry has a lot of things to think about. As I say, as you mentioned, Marcus Joseph, Lobo and Plaza as an option. There's probably a few others locally as well. I mean, I know there was a few of the guys from the secondary school that did well a couple of years ago that were strikers that did very well. Are they up to that level? Well, it's probably a do or die game, so you're not going to risk it for that. But so he has definitely got something to think about. And just touching on what you mentioned about Terry, I mean, I think they will. The normalisation committee will discuss it. But as we said, if you look at the results on paper in competitive games, it's not. I mean, unless his contract said qualify for the World Cup or you're sacked, just like kind of what they did with Tom, in a sense, with these kind of demands, he should be given a chance to continue, because, as I say, it may not have been the most fancy looking football to watch, but we've not been defeated. We may not have qualified, but we've got a chance of the Gold Cup. So it's a lot of things for people. I think people need to just calm down a little bit. I mean, they're going to slaughter me for saying that. And I think, we know we're living in a generation now. Everybody believes they can beat everything. So I can wake up tomorrow and believe I can be a plumber. I may not be able to fix a sink, and it's the same with everybody out there is a coach at the moment. Now, I have no problem with that, as I say, because we're all fans. But when it comes down to it, there's a reason why, for example, Terry Fenwick has a UEFA A licence. Some of those guys don't. I mean, I'm not being disrespectful. That's just fact. And there's a reason why people have not had coaching jobs before. So we have to be a little bit realistic in the way we think about things. But as I say, I do get the whole fan attitude,
Yeah, I was paying attention to the forums. People were chatting and messaging with me. I did an Instagram live, which I would have done today, but we wanted to respond as quickly as possible. I realize you guys like the Instagram live, so James and I will try to do a couple whenever we can. But the fans, a lot of the younger fans that I know, responded like, typical Trinidad Tobago, because they've been so used to losing that this is a refreshing change, and the people who are making decisions really have to kind of pay attention to this. And speaking about the fans, I did a poll before the Twitter polls that we always do. According to our polls, 67% believe that Trinidad Tobago is going to win. Obviously, 33% thought it was a Saint Kitts thing. So it seems as if, at least in our circles, there were people that believe that Trinidad Tobago is going to win. I know a lot of people that I spoke to thought that, we were just going to fall over and crumble and whatever. But, that's the voting polls for you. So, James, just to end things off, because we'll definitely have another show talking about, the external factors that has been affecting Trinidad and Tobago and that, but, that's a whole other topic by itself, which we'll talk about. So, James, what are your final takeaways from this game?
Well, one thing I want to leave with the fans, I want to pose a question. Do they really believe, for example, relieving Terry Fenwick of his duties will help us get past that game against Montserrat? I don't believe so, because, the one thing you have to think about is, people have talked about Angus Eve, Derek King's name has been there, but Derek King is part of Terry Fenwick's staff, and I do not believe usually you don't go to somebody else in the staff because it's the same football, Even although it's a different coach, he's been around the team, you have to go with somebody different. Angus Eve has obviously not been there working with the team, so it would change so many things in such a short space of time. So the best thing is to get on board and let's support Trinidad, and hopefully we can get Trinidad and Tobago, and hopefully we can get past Montserrat and then obviously progress. So do they really believe that, or is it just a reaction to the bad result we had against Bahamas? So it's something we have to ask ourselves deep down, Do you really believe that changing Terry Fenwick would make a difference? I don't think so.
Yep, and that's a very valid point to make at the end there, James, because the emotional responses to games by people who should know better is a big concern for me. These are not fans. I see, footballing people where it seems as if, they will ignore certain facts because of dislike and ego and this person not liking that person. And it affects our football. It really should be about, okay, this is a guy, let's give him what he needs. Because from a financial perspective, to fire Terry right now, we already, I think it was $80-something million in debt, which I think had that released recently. We'll talk about that as well. Some money was being paid out. We have been mismanaged for over 20, maybe 30 years for a long time. This thing didn't happen just a couple of weeks ago. This has been going on for a long time. Stephen Hart came in and did an amazing job papering over the cracks. And I think if I have to use analogies, I think Stephen Hart got the team to perform, papered over the cracks. And I think what Terry did was reveal the cracks. If I'm going to use extreme analogies, I think he's like, listen, this is a problem because they're both different styles of coaches. And right now, it's a massive cleanup at the entire level of our national football. We are $80-something million in debt. We have to pay those things back. Usually in a normalization committee, nothing is done. I don't know if people know this because I hear people saying, get rid of the normalization committee. You can't. It doesn't work like that. The normalization committee, while people might disagree in the way how it was executed, and I can understand that, according to a couple of people I spoke to, that normalization committee should have been in Trinidad and Tobago years ago, because we were in debt and we just got in more debt and then more debt and more debt, and it just kept going. And as anybody who does business would be like, that what's happening? It's amazing that we didn't go into became insolvent and they probably had to create TTFAS or something. So that's a whole other topic for a different discussion. But today, James, my takeaway is the same as yours. I think we need to keep this continuity. I think people need to, as you said, I couldn't say it any better, calm down, get behind the team. Yes, we're fans. We hate to lose. I hate to lose. Nobody likes to lose. But there's a lot of kids there who are giving their heart and soul for their country. They're putting up with a lot of nonsense. There's a lot of people out there, saying things. And, I would have probably said that even if they didn't win tonight, but I will always respect a team that fights. And I saw that tonight. And if they could maintain that and continue that, that fighting spirit, I think people will start believing in them. I think it's very difficult, as you said, like those movies where, crisis brings out the character. You are right. I think I couldn't come up with that analogy. So it's a good thing that you did. That Bahamas game was the game where the turning point in the movie, where I'm not going to say we're going to be miraculously good from now on. We have a long way to go still. And I think people need to understand this process is going to take years to fix. And I think, to be honest, by getting these victories and these results, we are performing better than we should based on the circumstances. So, that's a matter of opinion. I'm sure a lot of people disagree and they're going to give us some smoke for this. But, that's our honest opinion. That's what we do here. We don't pick on people. We just try to speak footballing facts as clear as possible. I understand people have differing views, and you know what? That's okay. Our thing is to really try to bring as much truth and factual information as possible, and throw in our opinions every once in a while. So, James, I know this was lengthier than usual, but it's one of those hot topics that we can't ignore. Congratulations to the guys bouncing back from which was a dark game. And folks, let us know what you think. Let us know what you think about this game, how they played, how they stood out, if you agree or disagree with our tactics, with Terry's tactics, not our tactics. And let us know what you think about the situation and how the press is handling the players, and just let us know. I'm sure you all have opinions, because I saw on the Instagram live how people were jumping on board. So once again, folks, don't forget to like, subscribe, send questions to James and myself. We're really loving the feedback, and it really influences us to really continue to listen, and it engages the conversation more. So James, once again, it's a pleasure to have you as always. And folks, we'll end off on a positive note tonight for Trinidad Tobago football, which we should be happy about. So thank you for joining us. Just a reminder, everyone, for more episodes with Shaka Hislop, be sure to head over to our YouTube channel. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more updates, interviews, and content.